Hey everybody, welcome back to an episode of Clear to Send. I'm Rowell Dionisio, your host, alongside with Francois. How are you doing, Francois?
Very good. Hey, Roa, how are you?
Good, good. I'm glad we're going to talk about Mobility Field Day. In this episode, we're going to talk about Arista, which was actually one of my favorite presentations out of Mobility Field Day because it wasn't really so much a presentation, but they did a live demo of Wi-Fi 7 and also MLO. So while I was there, I was able to do some captures, right? I really wanted to see this in action and understand, can I capture this and see what it looks like? And so when Arista came up and presented, they talked about their architecture, their EOS, their operating system, and they ended up releasing or announcing a new Wi-Fi 7 access point, the C460. It's a 4x4 AP, and I think one of the key things to recognize or keep an eye on when vendors release Wi-Fi 7 APs is that they are not 16 spatial stream, right?
What?
So are we really going to take advantage, the full advantage of Wi-Fi 7? Who knows? But I would be curious of how large that AP would be with 16 spatial streams. But
No one would do it.
I don't know if anyone will, and if it physically is possible to put that into a, somewhat
Mhm.
decent size AP. But they released a new AP, and with that, they before they did that, right? They talked about the AP, but Ken Duda, who is one of the co-founders of Arista, came up to talk about code quality. And I know a lot of us deal with issues regarding code because it impacts the user experience. It impacts how long it takes us to troubleshoot an issue because it is hard to identify whether you're being affected by code or not, right? And so Ken was really uh, animated about the architecture that they're building, how they test their code and have regression, and how they build this code quality into the culture of their organization. And I think for him, code quality is really an ethics thing. It's not really about
Mhm.
coming out with a ton of features and just pushing them out there, but coming out with features and being strategic and very detailed around the quality of how someone's building that code. And I think it
Mm.
was, it's really great to hear him talk about that. And I think Arista is one of the, I don't know, only ones who talk about code quality. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going back to the basics type of thing. What you want out of a network is just reliability,
Yes.
and that's like number one thing. Like the network should be the thing that no one knows is there, but works without any problem. It's kind of like electricity in your house. It's like, okay, it's there, it works, but you don't have to worry about it because it's very reliable, at least in some countries.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but but it's the same thing for the network. Like you said, it's nice to have new features and stuff, but both you and I, if we have a customer and they ask us to deploy a Wi-Fi in a very critical environment, we're not going to go for the latest version to get the small feature. We're going to have a tendency to go back to something that's more stable and that's going to run in production without creating noise. So I think it's like
Yes.
the basics of networking, and it's nice to see that they have like a high standard for it.
Yeah.
um, I remember him talking about, you know, acquiring other companies and then building that culture into those acquisitions, and it takes time and all of this. So I think he was talking about the acquisition of Mojo at the time for the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to get a little bit more of behind the scenes what's happening to make sure our network are reliable. And I agree with you. It's very important um, to have stable code for any networking devices.
Yeah, and I applaud them for really putting that first. But Rocky Gregory, who was one of the remote delegates, did ask a question to Ken where he asked, "Does feature velocity suffer due to code quality?" Right? Because if you're really
Mhm.
focused on code quality, you're not pushing out a lot of features. And with some of the companies who came to Mobility Field Day, they're pushing a lot of features, but no one's talking
Mhm.
about code quality there. And so when it comes to feature sets and code quality, you can't really have both, right? You can't be fast with features if you're trying to be slow with code, ensuring the code is good. And I think the way that Ken answered it was kind of maybe around it. He did say, hey, if we focus, have quality focus on code, it'll help improve features. And I think the key word there was improve features. It wasn't about like new features. He's talking about improving features, and maybe they're very selective on the features they release and ensuring that when they do release them, there isn't an issue with them as they release them out to their customers, right? And Arista has a lot of big customers out there, and I'm sure quality is of the utmost importance. But so they did spend a big section talking about code quality, but my favorite part of their presentation was them cutting away from the presentation and then actually doing a live Wi-Fi 7 test with MLO and showing us how MLO worked in their lab. So they brought all their equipment there. They had Arista switches, a Wi-Fi 7 AP. I think they used a Google Pixel phone, which was just sitting next to the laptop of the presentation laptop. And I really thought that was bold of them to do, because MLO is just so new, right? We've seen it in presentations, a lot of presentations. But for us to see it live and actually see Spectrum as well, I think they were using a Sidekick to show what Spectrum looked like when you did that. And to me, it went flawless. It was a pretty good demo. So I was able to do a capture. So as I try to get that ready to share here, what do you think of that MLO test, Francois?
Yeah, I think, Arista, they were the first ones to talk about MLO at WLPC, if you remember, maybe a year and a half ago. And we could already see the complexity of MLO, the additional MAC layer and all of this, the different type of MLOs. The presentation for Mobility Field Day was nice because they went back into explaining the different type of MLO, which one we would see implemented. It does. I feel like I need to rewatch the video because of all of the acronyms, but it's nice. It's going to kind of force us to get used to all of these acronyms. And then the live demo was awesome. I love when vendors do this, and then try to do it live. I think it creates a lot of excitement with the delegates, a lot of interaction. So it's really good for the event. And like you said, it went really well. And they were showing us on the Spectrum, here's what happens. You can have MLO on 6 gigahertz and 2.4, and that also triggers a lot of questions. I remember Keith asking, what would you want to do MLO on 6 and 2.4? So it can trigger all of these questions that it sparks the discussion, and I found it was, like you said, really good. They didn't have any hiccups, and then they had video backups, so it was kind of nice. And they also demoed the puncturing feature where you can see really that cool. At one point, like 120 megahertz part of the channel is not being used. And it's like, it's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So let me show you what a beacon looks like with MLO enabled. So this is my Wireshark capture, and I was just using my laptop to do this. So I didn't have a Wi-Fi 7 laptop. I'm just capturing beacons over the air, and I'm using Adrian Granada's tool, the Air Tool application, and then I used Wi-Fi Explorer to figure out what channel they were operating on. And so I was just looking at 6 gigahertz, saw that, and honed in with Air Tool on that channel. But you can see here Mojo Networks, right? That's their AP, and they're broadcasting two SSIDs, MFD11 and MFD11 EMLSR. And Francois, you and I were talking before recording, like there's going to be all these acronyms that you're going to have to be familiar with when it comes to MLO. And they do talk about the different types of MLO and what is the impact when you have legacy clients? Because to me, that was the most interesting part is how does MLO work when you still have older clients on the network. It's not going to be a pure Wi-Fi 7 environment, because Wi-Fi 7 is backwards compatible with 5 and 2.4 gigahertz, right? And so here, as I expand the beacon frame, I think let me collapse all of these real quick to make it easier. What is interesting to see, and also just so you know, I had to upgrade Wireshark to at least version 4.2.5 in order to see the information elements for Wi-Fi 7. When I think I was still on 4.0 and I did not see it, and I was like, oh, it's not working, but realized I didn't. My Wireshark wasn't updated. But you can see down here these information elements like multi-link, right? And once you open them, and the thing is, like, I haven't really looked into MLO yet, so I'm looking at these going, all right, I don't even know what these mean.
You do have the EML.
Yeah,
right?
EML. There's the EMLSR, and it's enabled, right? And what they showed on the video, and I encourage you to watch their demo, is this looks cool in terms of looking at the beacon frame, but it is going to be really difficult, or challenging at least, to troubleshoot and where an issue might lie, because here I'm capturing frames on the 6 gigahertz, but what if my device then had a multi-link on 6 gigahertz and 2.4, right? Like that question that Keith had. Like, where is the issue? Is it on the 6 gigahertz spectrum, or is it on the 2.4 gigahertz side? And so I'm not capturing on the 2.4 side. Like, how do I capture both channels now? So I thought it was rather interesting on what that looked like, and it just started giving me like scenarios in my head as I thought about it. I'm like, hey, Google Pixel, this guy's roaming around in the office, creating multi-links everywhere with the same AP, like 6 and 5, or maybe 2.4. And I don't think there is a I don't think we know like what the decision is. Is it going to do 6 and 5, or what would make a device go and use 2.4 for its multi-link? And I don't think we know that yet. But I did ask a question about, all right, is this configurable? Can I say, I want to turn on MLO, but only for 6 and 5 gigahertz, not 2.4? And maybe we'll see that. But in Arista's testing environment, they used a whole bunch of different clients: Google Pixel, Samsung, or Google Pixel 8, Samsung S24, OnePlus 11, the Intel BE200, and a Qualcomm Fast Connect 7800 adapter. And we'll include some screenshots into the show notes, because they did show the effects of MLO clients with legacy clients there, and they did see an improvement in throughput when you have a mixed environment using MLO. And it's a pretty big increase, right? So with some with like uplink traffic, they saw the Wi-Fi 7 clients have a 27% higher throughput on average compared to 11AX clients. And then they went ahead and tested it with the different MLO versions. But I think what we'll likely see is maybe one or two types of MLO being used in the wild. So when it came to bidirectional traffic, Arista was seeing 32% higher throughput with AX clients on. And then with, what is it? I'm trying to figure out what their graphs mean. But anyways, it was a high comparison. But what also was interesting was the puncturing, because when you watch the video, you'll see the full 160 megahertz wide channel being used, and they'll run a speed test. They were running a local speed test, and you see the spectrum being fully utilized. And via software, they introduced like an interference right somewhere in the middle of that 160 megahertz wide channel. And then you just see the puncturing actually remove that channel, and then the traffic is on the rest of that channel width. So you see a gap there where the AP decided not to use that channel. And I thought that was a really interesting use case. Now it was software driven, right? I don't know how you would generate interference on that specific channel using 6 gigahertz on 6 gigahertz, but it was a good test to show that they had puncturing working on their AP.
Yeah, it's nice to see that, we're getting more and more features in Wi-Fi to help us with the puncturing get a more reliable connection, and with MLO, getting more throughput out of our current connection. Or if you use MLO more as a redundancy, then you can get more reliability. So these features, the goal of these features is to make the technology a little bit more reliable and faster. It does add some complexity.
Yes.
But I feel like we're kind of slowly, maybe MLO will be like full MLO would be like Wi-Fi 8 type of thing.
Yeah.
But at least we're seeing some improvement and we're seeing real life tests from it. Now the question will be, will this really be useful for us in the field? Will this impact user experience?
Yeah.
So I guess this is yet to be seen, but it reminds
Right.
me of a little bit of multi-user MIMO. Remember, like everything
Yes.
was
Yeah.
nice in the lab, and then
now we were disabling it.
yeah. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how that can change,
Yeah.
actual people's connection.
Yeah, because they didn't talk about the overhead that is required to do MLO, right? There's negotiations that have to occur. There's separate associations. There's going to be 2 radios. You'll see 2
two MAC
different
layers.
MAC addresses. And so that's where the complexity comes in. And we'll talk about that in future episodes because we just don't have the equipment to test it with. We can understand the theory, but we'd like to see how that's implemented out in the wild. But that's Arista Networks. To me, that was a really good presentation. It shows that they understand Wi-Fi 7 and MLO and are working hard to get MLO working. So I would imagine seeing with the excellent code quality they're going after, they're going to have good Wi-Fi 7 APs.
For sure.
All right, guys.
So you guys can head over to the show notes, take a look at some of the screenshots, and then go watch those demo videos. It's pretty nice what they were able to share with us this year at Mobility Field Day.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. Bye.
Thank you.